General Eisenhower and Churchill looking at each other eye to eye. They must have had a private discussion that was further away from that security guard who heard those words. Our goal is to get American corporations secretly to back engineer and turn this technology from UFOs into technology that we can apply in the United States and get patents on. The abduction cases that I know about, one being a woman and her son abducted from Cimarron, New Mexico in 1980. She ended up underground and recognized where she was. Of making contact, because it does feel like we are at one of those revolutionary moments. We're in the 180-day countdown with at least a request in a bill, the COVID funding bill from Congress. Really, in a way, I can't say that it's demanding, but it's certainly strongly requesting the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence in 180 days, which would be June 24th, 2021, to tell the truth, facts about advanced aerial threats and linked foreign adversaries. And in the bill, it does not say if those foreign adversaries are Russia, China, and North Korea, or something out in the Milky Way galaxy. Well, leaving open, is the government finally getting ready to issue a kind of mind crack for everybody? We're not alone in the universe. Well, even if that is the only sentence that would be released to the New York Times on June 24th, we are not alone in the universe. And we are getting ready to tell you what we have learned about X, Y, and Z. That is the biggest revolution in how many thousands of years? I think it's in two categories. One is that Winston Churchill talked with Dwight Eisenhower, and I believe the year was 1943 in London. And a document came out in the National Archives in London about 2000, it was maybe 12 years ago. And it was when Larry King was putting out all of the material as it kept coming from the UK in the National Archives, where they said that they were now releasing in files to the public everything they had on UFOs. And a lot of us were saying, probably they have a, like, that has Z after UFO, and that's what they're releasing. But there was this very important document by a scientist. I know where the scientist worked, but I was requested by a family member not to identify. But I'm saying this is real. This is a real scientist in the UK who was the son of the security guard who was standing with Winston Churchill and Dwight Eisenhower in London when they were talking about one of the UK jets at the German border that had a silver disc, small, do ring like this along the entire fuselage of the jet, coming around the pilots and continuing. There's nothing that they knew that humans could do that was being reported by these professional pilots. And in the document that was released, there was the quote from the son scientist from his father's security guard standing next to Winston Churchill, that Winston Churchill allegedly said to then General Dwight Eisenhower, "We must keep this a secret for at least 50 years, or the stock markets will fall, religions will crumble, civilization will become raucous." And if it was 43, 50 years in the future would be 1993. In January of 1993, I and several people that I know who investigate the phenomena were told that 93 was going to be the year that we would get We're Not Alone in the Universe. I do not know what happened outside of March 13th, 1997, the flyovers, the state of Arizona. The next day, I got a call from a man who was the owner of a computer company in Cranford, New Jersey, that I had literally met, had been to his corporation, and he called to tell me, and why was I there? Why had I met him? Because he was doing boutique creations of very specific computers for the Department of Defense in Washington. And I had been referenced to him having to do with a UFO report that he had learned about because he did this boutique work for the DoD. So that had happened first. Now it's March 14th after the flyover of Arizona. And he called and said, Linda, I just want you to know that last night, one of our most important Department of Defense satellites was melted.
Wow.
And they are now considering that what happened over Arizona is related to the melting of a satellite.
I never heard that before. I never knew that.
From his lips in the phone to me, I'm telling you today. And there is sort of writ large, Alan, that the landscape of the entire UFO phenomena going back 2,000, 5,000, 45,000, 270 million years, Homo sapiens sapien has never known, are they friendly? Are they hostile? Are they neutral? The control remote viewers who had these tasks in Project Stargate in the 1980s, Lynn Buchanan told me every one of them was tasked at some point, and then later on, they would talk with each other. And the very skilled controlled remote viewers working for the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency, they all got that the universe is full of consciousness.
Right.
And that it fell into these categories of friendly, neutral, and hostile when it came to the Earth. General Eisenhower and Churchill looking at each other eye to eye. They must have had a private discussion that was further away from that security guard who heard those words that could have been the proclamation between the UK, the United States, and the Allies of World War II. We're going along with Churchill. Zero. Nobody is to know anything for the foreseeable future. We have to get out of World War II. We have to get beyond the war, and we cannot introduce UFOs and ETs, and that stuck as a policy. Now, at the other further end, also involving Dwight D. Eisenhower, I have had half a dozen sources over the last 30 or 40 years tell me that they do know for a fact, even if they can't show me photos, they can't show me 16 millimeter film that would have been shot back then, but that Dwight Eisenhower did not go to a dentist when he was in Palm Springs with his wife and with an entourage as president. That he was flown secretly to, it was Edwards Air Force Base, not Area 51 and not in Palm Springs, that he was taken to Edwards Air Force Base and introduced, this is what I've been told, to a blonde, a blonde humanoid. And that there was a discussion, I assume telepathically, I don't know that part for sure. And it had to do with the perspective of the blonde Nordics on nuclear weapons, on atomic bombs. It was made very clear to Dwight Eisenhower, we will not allow you to continue to do any atomic warfare because you do not understand that when you are splitting the atom, you are tearing into dimensions that you know nothing about. You are doing damage in other frequencies you know nothing about. We will not let this continue. I personally think, based on these other discussions, that that is absolutely what happened in and around President Eisenhower, whether people want to argue about where. I think it happened. And after that, Dwight Eisenhower, who I think wanted to tell the world the truth, and had Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso working in the Pentagon with the General Arthur Trudeau, which Corso told me, and I have understood in other discussions. The man in World War II that General Eisenhower respected the most was General Arthur Trudeau, who had a PhD in electronic engineering. Eisenhower looked up to him. Eisenhower chose him to be the first director of scientific research in the Pentagon. And who does Trudeau hire? Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, that they knew each other in the Italian front of the war. Those three men, Eisenhower, Corso, and Trudeau, they trusted each other. It was General Trudeau who told Corso, I'm going to show you. And Corso told me firsthand, he said, the day that General Arthur Trudeau asked him to come into his office in the Pentagon, and it was the beginning of their investigation of extraterrestrial technology from all these crashes. And General Trudeau said, I want you to see something. This is exactly what Corso told me. And he gets up from behind a big desk in his Pentagon office, walks over to, I think it was 3 banks of metal filing cabinets, opens up a drawer, asks Corso to come over. Corso said he looks into this file drawer expecting to see paper, and he didn't know what. He said there were things that looked like quarters. There were masses of what I thought were wires. And think about this, Alan. This is in the Pentagon in 1961. General Arthur Trudeau walks Philip J. Corso over to these file cabinets. Corso can't recognize anything that's in the cabinet that has been opened. And that's when General Trudeau says, this is what we have retrieved from some of the UFO crashes. And I want you, piece by piece by piece, to go to corporations where I will make the phone call. I will set up for the person that you will hand deliver. Everything that I give you, you hand deliver. And I will have it set up. And that's what Philip Corso said for 3 years, from 61 to 63. The general would say, now call ARCO on this, what we would turn out to be the fiber optics that we would eventually have light going through. Every single one he took to all these different corporations. And then this was one of the most important pieces that Corso told me directly, eye to eye, that answers the question of why might there be a policy that never changes about no one is to know that we're not alone in the universe. This is the part that's crucial. General Trudeau said to Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, our goal is to get American corporations secretly to back engineer and turn this technology from UFOs into technology that we can apply in the United States and get patents on. And once we have patents in corporations, Russia, China, any other country on the planet will not have any access to. The fastest way that they could develop what they had was through patents in American corporations. That is what Lieutenant Colonel Corso told me was the main reason then for all of this secrecy. So if it was money, control, protection, isolation of technology that the United States did not want anybody else to have, suddenly you can have a human understanding to why the new CIA, followed by the NSA, followed by the DIA, they would have orientations. Here's our highest priority in the UFO field, the back engineering and patenting of this technology and weaponizing whatever they could. How many times have we heard about $4 trillion missing from the Pentagon? Where did it go? Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, coming out and said there happens to be $2 to $3 trillion missing from the Pentagon. And I remember his face on TV and standing there and yelling at the television, because you have been back engineering UFOs and ETs and building, because this comes from other people, firsthand testimony, that we have entire cities underground with the best labs in the world are underground, that there is this fast subway system that goes between Area 51 and Edwards and in White Sands and to Area 29, which is also in New Mexico and is highly secret. It's all huge underground. Our government for 70 some years has been developing a parallel track. And this is, to me, this is the clincher of why I feel it is way past time. I don't care what they've back engineered, weaponized. I have talked with 3 people who have firsthand information about the interstellar trade routes that we are working with, quote unquote, friendly extraterrestrials, and that we started going out into the Milky Way galaxy with the help of these ETs in 1972. 1972 was only about 3 years after our first footstep on the moon. It means that we were already working with extraterrestrials. We were already getting ready to send highly trained, they may be gone, according to Spartan 1 and 2 in my Antarctica film, that Spartan 1's uncle had been going on these interstellar trade routes, and that his contract was he would go for 2 to 5 years and he would come back to the Earth, download all kinds of briefings. I was told long ago that we were in trade routes for namibium and gold, that we have a short supply here on this planet. It's already being recognized. China has been trying to get Australia to sell their multi mineral. It's around Perth. It is northeast. It's northeast. It's a big field northeast of Perth. And when I was there speaking at a conference about 10 or 12 years ago, it was in the headlines in the Australian newspapers. When I landed at the airport, this is what I was reading at the airport. China had approached the Prime Minister of Australia when I got there, where they were going to do a multi billions, up to $1 trillion. Now, this is where China can be, to purchase so that China would own all of that valuable gold and the rare metals northeast of Perth. And thank heaven, the Prime Minister had made a speech. If we sell for current money to China, and China owns inside of Australia, we will have given up our country. Honestly, that was in the papers that long ago. And look at what is happening today. China is now still, for their huge population and all of the technology that they have, they need rare metals. Everybody needs rare metals. And it is my understanding that when we started going on that secret interstellar trade route in the early 70s, we needed rare metals. And we needed more gold.
And what do we give them, the ETs that are in exchange for?
This is the difficult part. They apparently, and it may go back to Eisenhower for sure, they wanted an agreement where they could abduct a certain percentage of people for sperm and for eggs. Mm-hmm. The sperm and the eggs are applied for the creation of hybrid humanoids.
Right.
The animals, I've been told, I wish I had a document I could show you, but I've been told by somebody who did read an agreement that Eisenhower was somehow involved with, that there was a specific number of animals, not just cattle, not just horses. This is around the whole planet. Reindeer. There have been hundreds of reindeer, same thing. And that it was in the agreement that, now, if I say non-humans, this is to me the mystery. Honestly, as much as I've been exposed to, it is still not clear which non-humans are on the other side of agreements about having the quote unquote permission to take X percentage of animal, let's just say Earth life. Right. That includes humans. I think that is one of the facets that is probably true. Mm-hmm. Terry Lovelace, who is a longtime abductee, he and I have talked about that. He saw the vats, a huge wall of them. The part that is again confusing is this. The abduction cases that I know about, one being a woman and her son abducted from Cimarron, New Mexico in I think it was 1980. She ended up underground and recognized where she was, underground in Las Cruces, New Mexico, mm-hmm. which is a hop and a jump from White Sands. It's very close, all underground. She is the first person that I know of on the entire planet who, under hypnosis with Dr. Leo Sprinkle from the University of Wyoming, director of counseling and testing, very, very competent, very, very grounded. His investigations of animal mutilations and human abductions are as good as anybody ever did. In the hypnosis that he did with her, her first name was Myra. She recalled tall, jaundiced skin, very white-haired, wearing white nightgown type, meaning no structure, who had little grays all around, which we now know today in 2021, those are artificial intelligence, who do the bidding of tall grays, tall reptilians, tall blondes, red-hairs, black-hairs. So whenever you have any description of the little ones, it would be like our saying our computers could get off the desk and walk around and we could talk to the computers and they could go downstairs, they could go out to the car, they could do what we programmed them to do. And that she became frightened because she began picking up telepathic thoughts. And that one of the jaundiced tall ones telepath, "I apologize," like she's hearing it in English, because they go to the language center of any brain in front of them. They don't need to do anything except just communicate telepathically. Yeah. So that's why I say English.
And the thoughts are translated.
They aren't translating. They're going right into the brain, into the language center. And that this tall one, in the apology, she started getting telepathic thoughts. And the telepathic thoughts scared her. As if whatever the apology was, whatever else she was feeling between every being that was in the room, she was picking up that it was not honest, that she was afraid, and she ran. And some people would say, well, that's not possible. The ETs can control all of us at any moment. They can paralyze. Who is to say on something like she's standing in front of a tall, real, organic power who is in the act of apologizing and she becomes afraid? I don't think it is a rule that if a human starts running because they're afraid, that doesn't mean that it would mean that the tall, jaundiced one would immediately be able to free. Well, she was just getting contradiction from all of the little ones and the tall one. When she ran, she did not know where she was running. She just ran. And she ran down a hall and she heard water. And she ran for where she heard water. And here was a round, huge tank in the ground. And in it were floating beings with large heads. And she saw organ parts in the water that she recognized as she thought were from cattle. That is the case, the Myra case and the hypnosis from Dr. Leo Sprinkle, that was the first time and led to discussions by John Lear and Bob Lazar and others later on, that this was where the beings were absorbing their nourishment. And last night I had Kathleen Marden. She has worked on 5,000 different abduction cases in her work. Mm-hmm. And she has broken down and said last night, the non-humans that we are dealing with, would be in all categories. They do not eat like we do. They have solutions and they have gels. They immerse their bodies in some of the solutions for nourishment. They have gels that they put on for medicine. And there was another category. And suddenly it's like 70 years are beginning to fall into comprehension, cattle mutilations and the human abductions, and your question about would the extractions from the animals be building other containers or being used for hybrids? My answer is maybe both of those, but it's very clear that there is a process of extraction of organic material from this planet in a lot of ways that are turned into products that we humans would not recognize, would not understand, liquids and gels by absorption in the skin. Finally, a truth. As simple as that. If you look back 5,000 years or 12,000 to Göbekli Tepe, and you look at the history of this planet, in which there have been these boxes of religions, there have been the so-called gods that made humans get down on their knees to them. And I don't think one of them was ever a god. They were ETs. The whole planet for at least 12,000 years is demonstrably one in which Homo sapiens sapiens is abused. Because from my point of view, if you are a civilization that evolves for 12,000 years and you are always under the thumb of another intelligence that manipulates you, we are a God, get down on your knees to us. We are a God, bring us whatever, the blood, the sacrifices of animals that go back into other periods of time. And that humans are never, ever talked to, communicated honestly. Then we are today in the 21st century, 12,000 years later. We are an abused species. And part of this abused species is going out into the Milky Way galaxy and beyond without a single general human population knowing and it being told we're not alone. That we are finally being given respect enough for the truth of something so huge. We're not only not alone in the universe, we are in interstellar trade for rare metals with ETs that have been helping us since the 70s. And that I would stress, there are other intelligences, there are beings, and they really care about us. And they want us to get past this difficult time of lies, deception by other forces that have never told humans the truth. That is why we've got to have this revolutionary headline.
If you enjoyed this, make sure to watch the next video on AwakenZone. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, but you won't want to miss what's coming next.